we just got it. Let's move on. I mean, that doesn't mean it's a great scene. It just means it's a good scene.
Smokey and the Bandit wasn't just another movie. It was a cultural ride across the 1970s. Fast cars, funny one-liners, and that unforgettable chemistry between Burt Reynolds and Sally Field made it a box office hit that nobody saw coming. But even legends have their slip-ups. Between the roaring engines and chase scenes, there were hilarious bloopers that somehow made Untold the final cut. While some fans caught them years later, others never noticed at all. From missing props to continuity errors, there's more here than meets the eye. Join us as we take a closer look at the movie, its cast, and the moments that slipped past the editors. The movie that drove into history. Smokey and the Bandit isn't just another action comedy. Released in 1977, it became one of the biggest hits of its time. The film starred Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, Jackie Gleason, Jerry Reed, Pat McCormick, Paul Williams, and Mike Henry. A cast that perfectly mixed charm, humor, and chaos. The story followed Bo Bandit Darville, played by Reynolds, and his friend Cletus Snowman Snow, played by Reed. Together they were truck drivers on a dangerous mission to smuggle 400 cases of Coors beer from Texarkana to Atlanta, something that was illegal back then because Coors wasn't sold east of Texas. While Snowman drove the truck full of beer, Bandit distracted the police in his shiny black 1977 Pontiac Trans Am. Their plan: keep the law busy while the beer made it home safely. But things took a wild turn when Bandit picked up Carrie, a runaway bride played by Sally Field. Her escape made Bandit a target for Sheriff Buford T. Justice, a loud and funny lawman played by Jackie Gleason. What followed was one of the most entertaining car chases in movie history. Full of crashes, close calls, and comic timing. The film wasn't just about fast cars and beer smuggling. It was about the spirit of rebellion, freedom, and pure fun. It grossed $127 million at the box office, a massive success compared to its small $4.3 million budget. It became the second highest grossing movie of 1977, right after Star Wars. That's no small deal. And this success didn't stop there. It started a whole Smokey and the Bandit franchise with sequels and endless pop culture references. But how did a movie about truckers and beer become such a phenomenon? The story behind its making is just as exciting as the film itself. A stuntman's dream turned masterpiece. The man behind the movie, Hal Needham, was not your typical Hollywood director. In fact, Smokey and the Bandit was his first time directing. Before that, he was a stuntman, one of the best in the business. He had dreamed of turning his wild stunts and love for the open road into a film. Originally, he wanted to make it a small-budget B-movie, something fun but simple, costing around $1 million. Happened to have Jerry Reed play the Bandit, but convincing studios wasn't easy. Most producers saw Needham as just a stunt guy, not someone who could direct the hit movie. That changed when Burt Reynolds, the biggest movie star in the world at that time, read the script. Reynolds was Needham's friend, and even though he told him it was the worst script he had ever read, he still agreed to do it. That one decision changed everything. With Reynolds on board, studios suddenly took the project seriously. Jerry Reed switched top-laying Snowman, and Nem finally got his chance to prove himself. However, Universal Studios gave him a tough time. Just 2 days before filming, they cut $1 million from the budget. That left Needham with only $3.3 million after paying Reynolds his $1 million salary, but instead of giving up, Needham and his assistant director, David Hamburger, worked for 30 hours straight to replant the shoot. That determination paid off. Despite the tight budget, they made one of the most memorable films of the decade. The magic behind the characters and cast. The characters in Smokey and the Bandit became unforgettable because of how real and funny they felt. A lot of that came from the cast and their chemistry. Jackie Gleason, who played Sheriff Buford T. Justice, brought his own flavor to the role. He was actually given full freedom to improvise and come up with his own lines. Gleason's quick wit and sharp tongue made the sheriff one of the most hilarious villains in movie history. In fact, many of his most famous moments weren't in the script, like the scene where Buford meets Bandit in a diner without realizing who he is. That whole moment was Gleon's idea. Even the name Buford T. Justice had a story behind it. It came from a real Florida Highway Patrol officer who was known to Burt Reynolds' father, who used to be the police chief of Riviera Beach, Florida, and the sheriff's favorite word. Some also came from Reynolds' dad, a phrase he used often. Sally Field, on the other hand, only joined the movie after her agent convinced her it was the right move. Universal executives didn't want her at first. They thought she wasn't attractive enough, but Reynolds, who was already a huge star, insisted that she be cast. The two became great friends, and their chemistry on screen became one of the reasons audiences fell in love with the movie. Field later said that much of the movie was improvised. The lines, the timing, even the jokes, that spontaneity made it feel natural, not forced. It wasn't just a film. It was a ride filled with personality and charm. Bloopers, music, and lasting legacy. The production of Smokey and the Bandit was filled with creativity and last-minute genius. The script itself went through many changes before filming. In the early draft, Sally Field's character wasn't named Carrie, she was called Kate. Big Enos and Little Enos were named Kyle and Dickie. The prize for completing the beer run wasn't money either. It was supposed to be a new truck. And the famous car wasn't even the same model at first. It was changed later to the sleek 1977 Pontiac Trans Am that fans still adore today. Then came the music. The movie's theme song, Eastbound and Down, became an instant hit. Jerry Reed, who played Snowman, wrote it almost overnight. When showed it to Needham, the director didn't react at first, making Reed nervous. Reed offered to rewrite it, but Needham famously told him, "If you change even one word or note, I'll choke you." That song went on to become one of Reed's most popular and a symbol of the film's free-spirited vibe. The costumes also played a big role. The Western-style outfits in Gleon's sheriff uniform were custom-made by Never Western Wear of Fort Worth, Texas. They helped shape the film's bold Southern identity. The movie also came out at a perfect time, the 1970 SCB radio craze. Truckers and radio lovers connected with the movie instantly. The success of Smokey and the Bandit even helped bring shows like The Dukes of Hazzard to television. Speaking of which, did you know that 3 future cast members of The Dukes of Hazzard appeared in the movie in small uncredited roles, including Ben Jones, John Schneider, and Sonny Schroyer? Years later, Burt Reynolds himself returned the favor by playing Boss Hogg in the 2005 movie version of The Dukes of Hazzard. From its humble beginnings as a stuntman's dream to becoming a pop culture phenomenon, Smokey and the Bandit proved that great energy, teamwork, and a sense of humor could turn even a low-budget idea into a classic. Every chase, every blooper, and every line delivered with charm helped make it unforgettable. A movie that still makes audiences laugh, cheer, and look twice whenever the Bandit hits the road. And while fans still celebrate its wild chases and witty charm, few know how it all began. The idea for this blockbuster didn't come from a studio boardroom or a big-budget pitch. It started with something much simpler and a little unexpected. How a beer problem became a movie idea. When stuntman Hal Needham was in Georgia working as Burt Reynolds' stunt double for the movie Gator in 1976, someone on set brought him a few cases of Coors beer from California. Needham put the beers in his hotel fridge, but he noticed something funny. The maid kept stealing them. That's when he remembered reading an article in Time magazine about how Coors beer was actually illegal to sell east of the Mississippi River. The reason? It wasn't pasteurized and needed to stay cold, which made it hard to ship. Coors was only sold in 11 western and southwestern states, which meant people on the East Coast couldn't get their hands on it. Needham suddenly thought bootlegging Coors would make a good plotline for a movie. And that was the light bulb moment that sparked one of the most famous road films in Hollywood history. But when he showed his idea to his close friend and roommate Burt Reynolds, not everyone thought it was a great plan. Why? Burt and Sally almost said no. At the time, Hal Nehm was living in Burt Reynolds' pool house and had been for almost 12 years. They were good friends, but their schedules were so busy they barely saw each other. Onede, Nem walked up to Reynolds with the movie script written by hand on yellow legal pads. Reynolds read it and told him, "If you can get the money to shoot it, I'll star in it." But Reynolds' friends were horrified. According to his autobiography, they got down on their knees with tears in their eyes and begged me not to do it. They thought it was too risky and would hurt his career, but Reynolds trusted Needham and went ahead with it anyway. Sally Field, who played Carrie Frog, also had her doubts, but for a very different reason. She said, "I did Smokey and the Bandit because Sybil was coming out and everyone said, 'Wah, the work is extraordinary, but man is Sally Field ugly.'" That comment stuck with her. When Burt Reynolds, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, personally called and asked her to join the movie, she was shocked. There was no script, she said, it was almost entirely improvised, but she decided to take the role, thinking, "If I play this character that Burt is supposed to think is attractive, maybe the world will think I'm attractive too." It turned out to be a smart move. The film became a hit, and fire and screen chemistry made it unforgettable. What's even more amazing is how much of the movie was made up as they went along. The actors had fun, improvised lines, and created moments that still make audiences laugh today: the cars, the chaos, and the comedy. When Nem started filming, he already had a clear picture in his head. Fast cars, crazy stunts, and lots of laughs. He saw a Pontiac Trans Am in a magazine and thought it would be the perfect car for the Bandit. He called Pontiac and asked for 6 cars to use during production. Pontiac only agreed to send 4. Needham also asked for 4 Bonnevilles for Sheriff Buford's police cars, but got only 2. By the time filming wrapped up, 3 Trans Ams were completely wrecked, and the 4th one wouldn't even start. They had to push it into the final scene just to make it look like it was running. When it came time for Smokey and the Bandit 2, Needham made sure that wouldn't happen again. He asked for 10 Trans Ams and 55 Bonnevilles. And this time, Pontiac didn't hesitate. But it wasn't just cars that caused problems. Just before production began, Universal Studios sent someone down to Atlanta to deliver bad news. The film's budget was being cut by $1 million. The total was supposed to be $5.30 million, but now Needham had $4.3 million to work with. Since Burt Reynolds' salary was $1 million alone, that left only $3.3 million to make the entire movie. Still, Needham pushed through, adjusting schedules and cutting corners where he could. He made every dollar count. And somehow the movie ended up looking much bigger than its budget. Originally, the script was completely different. Bandit's last name was LaRue. Carrie's name was Kate, and the prize for completing the beer run wasn't $80,000, it was a new truck. Even the Bandit's car wasn't supposed to be a Trans Am at first. It's funny how much the movie changed before it hit theaters, and how all those changes made it even better. Bloopers and banter. Some of the best things about Smokey and the Bandit happened by accident. Jackie Gleason, who played Sheriff Buford T. Justice, was a genius when it came to comedy. The studio had originally wanted actor Richard Boone for the role, but Burt Reynolds said he wanted someone a little crazier, a little more dangerous, and a lot funnier. So, Gleason got the job and completely made it his own. The character Buford T. Justice was actually based on a real person that Reynolds' father, a Florida police chief, once knew. The real Buford used to say "some" instead of "son of a," and Gleason loved that. He took the phrase and made it part of his character's personality. But Gleason didn't just follow the script. He barely read it. Reynolds later said that Gleason never said a single word in the script. He made things up as he went. Like the scene where toilet paper trails out Ophi's pant leg as he leaves a barbecue joint, that moment wasn't planned. It was all Gleason. On set, he also had a funny code word. Whenever he told his assistant Mal he wanted a hamburger, it actually meant the wanted a glass of bourbon. And while the movie is full of scenes that look perfectly timed, there was one thing audiences didn't see. Burt Reynolds and Gleason were supposed to share more screen time. But after shooting their first scene together, Reynolds reportedly asked the director to cut all the others. No one ever said why. Even the music that defined the movie came together at the last minute. Jerry Reed, who played Cletus, also wrote and sang Eastbound and Down. He promised Hal Needham he'd have a song ready, But by the end of filming, he still hadn't written it. So, one night he stayed up and wrote it overnight. The next morning, Hep laid it for Needham, who sat quietly for a moment. Reed, worried, said, "If you don't like it, I can change it." Needham quickly replied, "If you change one damn note, I'll kill you." The song became one of Reed's biggest hits in the heart of the movie soundtrack. Even famous director Alfred Hitchcock loved the film. His daughter Patricia revealed that every Wednesday he screened movies in his office. And the last one he ever watched was Smokey and the Bandit. It was his favorite film in his final years. Proof that even the master of suspense couldn't resist a good car chase, some laughter, and Arbel with a cause. But even a classic like Smokey and the Bandit wasn't free from errors. Mistakes on the road. One of the funniest mistakes happens when Sheriff Justice is stopped at a roadblock. A passing truck hits his open car door, knocking it off. But when the camera cuts to a wide shot, the door is suddenly back and perfectly closed, another funny one. When a police car at the roadblock rolls off an embankment into the river, it starts as a late 60s Ford Galaxy, but when it lands at the bottom, it magically turns into a Plymouth Fury. In another scene when Bandit is driving in the rain just before picking up Carrie, you can clearly see two people sitting in the car. Even though he's supposed to be one, and somehow, no matter how many dusty back roads the Bandit speeds down, his shiny black Trans Am never seems to get dirty. It's spotless in every next shot. There's also a moment where Sheriff Buford T. Justice crashes on a bridge and the hood of his car bends out of shape. But a few scenes later, it's mysteriously fixed. Good as new. These slip-ups might not ruin the story, but they definitely make rewatching the film a little more fun. You start to notice things you didn't before, like catching secrets hidden in plain sight, factual errors, and funny logic. Beyond car mix-ups and clean vehicles, the movie also has some factual errors that make you scratch your head. Sheriff Justice keeps saying he's in hot pursuit of the Bandit, but by law, his pursuit would end the moment he lost sight of him. And since the Bandit spends most of the movie far ahead, Buford's claim to hot pursuit doesn't really hold up. Then there's the beer problem. Snowman's trailer is said to be carrying 400 cases of coarse beer, all stacked neatly against the back doors. Anyone who's ever seen how heavy beer cases are knows that without straps or proper support, those bottles would be shattered by the time they reached Atlanta. Then there's the opening song where it says, "Band hit them brakes. Found he had no air." That sounds dramatic, but in reality, trucks in the 1970s used triple-valve air brake systems. If a truck lost all its air, the brakes would actually lock up, not fail. Another odd detail is when Sheriff Justice sneaks up on three men at an abandoned car. Somehow, they don't hear his car pull up or his footsteps, but they can clearly hear the tiny click of a cigarette lighter being closed. It's almost cartoonish. There's also a small but funny mix-up with geography. Justice keeps saying he's from Texarkana, Texas, which is in Bowie County. But the sheriff's car clearly shows a decal from Montague County, which is actually 6 counties away. Fans noticed and had a good laugh over it. These little inconsistencies might not change the movie, but they do show how filming such fast-paced action can lead to small but noticeable goofs. Goofs that weren't really goofs. Some supposed mistakes in Smokey and the Bandit aren't really errors at all once you look closer. For example, people often question how Bandit could buy a car, install a CB radio, and order custom plates all within a few hours. But it's easy to forget that the movie's timeline is built around a fast-moving story, and not every small detail is shown on screen. The race they're planning for is the next day, so it's fair to assume he had enough time to get it done. Another debated mistake is the CB channel confusion. Bandit and Snowman agree to use odd channels and switch them every time they talk. Some people wonder how everyone else, from Sheriff Justice to random truckers, could instantly find them without searching. But just because we don't see them turning dials doesn't mean it didn't happen. Then there's the moment when a police chief tells another officer that the Mulberry Bridge has been in disrepair for 6 months. Some say it's unrealistic because a police officer should already know that about his own area, but the movie makes it pretty clear that this particular officer isn't exactly the smartest unny in the force. Another so-called mistake happens after Bandit drops off Carrie Ave Diner. He later finds her driving his Trans Am, which made fans wonder how she got the keys. The answer is simple: she probably hotwired the car. It might sound unlikely, but that's part of the fun and unpredictability of her character. Some fans even pointed out that Bandit could have legally transported the Coors beer if he'd just gotten a permit, but that would have ruined the whole story. The thrill came from doing it illegally. Without that risk, there'd be no chase, no drama, and no movie. These moments remind us that not every plot hole needs fixing. Some are what make the story exciting. The revealing mistakes and little details, some goofs were less about logic and more about what ended up on camera. The Trans Am speedometer, for instance, always shows the same mileage no matter how far Bandit drives, and the ignition key always stays in the off position. When Bandit and Snowman open the warehouse door full of stacked Coors boxes, the crates look heavy and full, but when the forklift hits them, they are clearly empty, even though we are glass breaking. Then there's the CB radio mistake. When Buford and Bandit talk over the radio, Buford isn't pressing the button to